Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about a romance drama film called My Father's Will from 2009. Enjoy your viewing. Italian businessman and billionaire Ferro Olivetti lives a life of luxury. He drives the most expensive supercars, climbs to the top of a mountain in his own helicopter, and then skis down from there. He flies around San Francisco in a private jet with a beautiful top model. This is where he now lives and runs his own company. Returning to his office, Ferro gives instructions to his assistant Lorenz. He wants him to buy out the shares of a smaller company for $60 million and take it over completely. As the billionaire is relaxing in the afternoon, he receives a call from his worried mother near the pool, saying that his father is in critical condition. Ferro immediately boards his plane and flies to Italy, remembering his father's words on the way, who said that it would be difficult for the boy to find true love, as the successful son is surrounded by many women who are only interested in his money. Finally reaching the bedside of his dying father, Ferro takes his hand. The weakened old man tells his son his last wish. The father wants the boy to leave his home for 1 month and spend that month completely without his money and connections. A few days later, the father dies, and Ferro returns to San Francisco. He tells Lawrence about his father's wishes. Ferro will have to leave for a month. After that, he changes his identity with his driver Claude so that no one will recognize a rich businessman named Ferro. He flies to New York with one small bag in his hands. The guy tries to get any job he can, but he is rejected everywhere. In the evening at a local bar, Ferro is left practically penniless. This forces him to order only a glass of water and some olives. At first, a blonde girl nearby notices a handsome guy, but he turns out to be a simple hard worker named Claude, which makes the girl immediately disappear. The place of the beauty is immediately taken by the lush blonde Peta, who gladly invites the guy to her home, having learned that he does not even have a place to spend the night. Peta takes the guest to her bedroom and offers herself to him for free, but the guy decides to refuse such a great pleasure. He lies that he is not oriented and goes to the next room, where he enjoys admiring the hostess's sleeping friend. Feeling someone else's gaze on her, the girl wakes up and is very frightened of the stranger. She tells him to get out. On the street, Ferro is attacked by 2 criminals, but the boy fights them off. Meanwhile, the police arrive at the scene and take him to the station. In the morning, the cops let Ferro go free, and the boy thinks about what to do next. Meanwhile, on the way home, Diana is horrified to remember how a few months ago a vile man did dirty things to her. To calm herself down, she goes to her mother's house, who once again advises her daughter to find a good boyfriend. Ferro spends the next night on a park bench. He doesn't even have money for a hot dog. A kind vendor gives the poor guy a meal for free. On the road, Ferro almost gets hit by a van driven by Fred, a courier. Ferro tells him that he wants to get a job. After that, Fred takes him to the home of his employer Curtis, who is in need of a personal driver. At this point, Curtis, who is quite wealthy, treats poor people like trash. Once again, he quarrels with his unkind wife Kat. After talking to the boy for a while, Curtis agrees to hire him, adding that he will also have to fulfill his other assignments. For example, tonight there will be a party at the rich man's house, where Ferro will have to work as a bartender all evening. The guy serves Curtis and his friends, and then gives the drunkest of them a ride home. On the way, he instructs Lorenz to give the company's employees who have distinguished themselves a decent bonus for the past month. When Ferro returns to Curtis's house, he has set aside a separate room for him. The nice guy is unsuccessfully seduced by the owner's wife, the owner's daughter, and surprisingly, even the owner himself wants to seduce the guy. Ferro fends off the worried family by lying about having an STD. The next day, Ferro enters the office building where Curtis's real estate agency is located. The guy is surprised to see that Diana also works for the rich man as an agent, but the girl is not at all eager to talk to the brute who scared her so much that night. 3 days later, Ferro takes a small advance from his employer to send Diana a bouquet of flowers. He does not put any note in the bouquet of flowers. The next day, Curtis forgets a suitcase with documents in his office and tells Diana to urgently call a taxi and bring the documents to his home. The girl has to obey, and then Curtis orders Ferro to take Diana back. In the car, Ferro apologizes to the girl for the night he scared her. He admits that it was he who sent her the flowers and says that he will gladly take the beautiful girl wherever she needs to go. The driver takes Diana to the funeral of a distant relative, after which they decide to have a cup of coffee at a roadside cafe. The girl sadly tells him that her husband was killed in the war in Iraq, and she hasn't been able to find a place for herself since. The two spend a wonderful evening together, after which Ferro takes his companion home to her mom and dad, where the couple even finally kisses. Meanwhile, her parents look on curiously through the window. A few days later, Curtis refuses to give Diana a day off, so she and Ferro have to go to several properties to see them. When the two return to the office, Nancy is already waiting for them, having lied to her father about Pharaoh trying to seduce her. Without understanding the situation, the rich man immediately fires Pharaoh, and when Diana tries to stand up for the guy, Curtis calls the employee a fool. This makes the girl furious, and she also writes a letter of resignation. On the street, Pharaoh talks to the girl. He tells her that it was quite the opposite, and that Curtis's entire family took turns trying to get him into bed. After having a good laugh at the situation, they go to dinner at Diana's parents' house. But the dinner doesn't go well, because the parents see how well their daughter treats a stranger's boyfriend. They start asking him about his job and his plans for the future. Pharaoh is still pretending to be poor Claude, who was also fired today. This makes the parents very worried about their daughter's choice. But it doesn't bother Diana too much, because she really likes the kind and sensitive Pharaoh. She feels he has serious potential. After some reflection, the two of them come to the conclusion that they no longer need to look for work. Instead, Diana wants to open her own real estate agency with her family's savings. She is confident that this will be a successful idea. Thanks to his experience and connections, Pharaoh, an experienced businessman, approves of Diana's idea and gives her a lot of great advice on how to start and run her business. In a restaurant, the two of them drink a couple of glasses of wine to celebrate the success of their business. Afterwards, they go home and start kissing. But the girl suddenly stops at the most interesting place. Diana begins to cry and explains that a few months ago, her husband's former colleague became an alcoholic, deceived her, and took advantage of her. Pharaoh realizes how difficult it is for the girl and comforts her. A few days later, Lawrence calls Pharaoh and tells him that his boss needs to fly to San Francisco immediately, as the fate of the entire company depends on tomorrow's trial. Pharaoh has to go to San Francisco to resolve this issue, and the next day he returns to Diana's agency office. Suddenly, Kat appears, and she keeps trying to get the handsome man into bed, and almost attacks him. When Diana sees this, she becomes insanely jealous of the guy and runs out of the office. She is sure that he is cheating on her. Pharaoh never manages to make peace with the girl. Finally, the month he promised his father is over. The guy returns to his business in San Francisco, but a few days later the billionaire comes back to New York. Diana finally forgives him, and even agrees to fly with him to his home in San Francisco. On the way, Pharaoh finally reveals the truth about himself to the girl, and explains that it was his deceased father's last wish. In San Francisco, Diana is surprised to see how simply and kindly Pharaoh communicates with his employees. Pharaoh confesses to his companion that she is the first love of his life and proposes marriage, and the girl gladly agrees. 6 months later, the happy couple gets married, and Pharaoh finally realizes how right his beloved father was, and how important his last wish was. If you have watched the video so far, you should know that I am happy to have viewers like you. Thank you for watching to the end. Subscribe to the channel and follow the news. Klontsak Recapped was with you. See you soon.